Welcome back. Lincoln currency. There once was a simple coin, copper-plated zinc, minted in 1987, that most people threw around, paid no attention to, used and tossed, until collectors and experts peered closely. When you look at one of these pennies, you may see just a piece of change. But inside it lies a story of design, minting innovation, rare mistakes, a mass production, and yet moments when rarity emerges. This is the story of the 1987 1-cent coin, what it is, what makes some versions valuable, and what its real market value is, versus sensational claims. First, let us travel back in time to 1987 in America. The United States Mint was producing large quantities of the Lincoln Memorial cent. The obverse design was Abraham Lincoln in profile, designed originally by Victor David Brenner. His design had been in use since 1909. On the reverse was the Lincoln Memorial, a design by Frank Gasparo that had been in place since 1959. That reverse replaced the earlier, wheat years, reverse from the first half of the 20th century. The Memorial reverse shows the building, with small details including the tiny statue of Lincoln inside. That statue is tiny, but many collectors use its clarity, its visibility, as one of the markers of good condition. The 1987 penny is part of what is called the Lincoln Memorial Cent series, minted from 1959 until 2008. Its composition is a zinc core with a copper plating. After 1982, the U.S. Mint changed from solid bronze to copper-plated zinc to save cost. So the 1987 1 cent is about 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper plating. The weight is approximately 2.50 grams. The diameter is about 19.00 millimeters. The edge is plain, without serrations or ornamentation. These physical parameters are fairly standard for pennies post-1982. Most circulated ones show wear, oxidization, discoloration, the copper layer worn away, etc. In 1987 coins were produced at multiple U.S. Mint facilities, Philadelphia, No Mint Mark, Denver, with D Mint Mark, and San Francisco, proof coins with S Mint Mark. The mintage numbers for the circulating coins are very large, billions of pieces. For example, the Philadelphia and Denver mints each struck over 4.6 to 4.8 billion pieces. Proof coin numbers from San Francisco are much smaller, in the single millions, but still not extremely scarce. Because of these huge mintages, most 1987 pennies are common. In average circulated condition, they are essentially worth 1 cent, or just marginally above once people consider condition or collector demand. So, what elements make certain 1 cent coins from 1987 worth more? What makes a coin go from 1 cent into tens, or sometimes hundreds of dollars, or more? One factor is condition. A coin that has been well preserved, that hasn't been corrupted by circulation, by scratches, by environmental damage, by cleaning, may retain originally sharp details, the fine lines in Lincoln's bust, the hair, the words, "In God We Trust, Liberty," the date, on the reverse, the fine lines of the memorial, including the columns, the statue inside, the steps, the landscaping, the rims sharp and unblemished, the fields, flat backgrounds, with minimal marks. Such mint state, uncirculated coins, especially graded by professional services as MS-65, MS-66, MS-67, MS-68, or even higher, can fetch higher premiums. Color is also important. For copper-plated coins, red or red-brown coloration, i.e. where the copper plating still retains its original reddish tint, is more desirable than coins where the copper has worn to brown or a dull color. Another factor is error varieties or die varieties. Errors are mistakes that occurred during minting, misstrikes, off-center strikes, broad strikes, double dies, repunched mint marks, etc. Varieties are also intentional or at least repeatable design or die differences catalogued by numismatists. For example, one variant of 1987 is the 1987 D/DRPM, a repunched D mint mark at Denver, catalogued as FS501 in some lists of varieties. Such varieties are collected, and high-grade specimens of those can fetch significantly more than standard examples. The proof coins from San Francisco sometimes have very sharp strike, mirror-like fields, cameo or deep cameo contrast, which raises their collectible value. Another factor is rarity of surviving examples in high condition. Even though many were minted, relatively few are preserved in perfect condition. That means there are few MS68 red, MS69 red, or perfect proof PR70 deep cameo examples. When such coins come to market, they attract attention, bidding wars, and high prices. Also, collectible interest comes from market trends, collector demand, the popularity of era coins, publications, auctions that publicize large sums, coin shows, coin forums. When word spreads that a certain coin has sold for a high price, that tends to raise interest and awareness, which can push up values for comparable coins. Absolutely, let's continue and go much deeper into part 2, expanding the narrative for your YouTube video script, making it long, detailed, and continuous with no titles or captions, just flowing storytelling about the 1987 1-cent coin, its background, the minting process, its connection to American history, the collector's psychology, and the myths about huge values, so your viewers can stay engaged like they are on a mystery journey from ordinary pocket change to legendary treasure hunts. Imagine the year is 1987. The world is changing. The Cold War is nearing its twilight. The personal computer age is beginning. Music, fashion, television are alive with color and noise, and somewhere quietly in the background, the presses at the United States Mint are roaring, producing billions of tiny copper-plated zinc discs, each stamped with the stoic face of Abraham Lincoln, each one so small, so common that people barely notice them. This anonymity is part of their magic. Coins like this are everywhere yet invisible. Until someone pauses and really looks and asks, could this one be different? Could this one be worth something extraordinary? To understand the 1987 cent, you have to understand the production process. The mint operates with incredible precision, but also staggering speed. Planchets, the blank metal discs, are fed through high-tonnage presses at immense pressure, each die striking thousands upon thousands of times a day. The obverse die carries the portrait of Lincoln designed by Victor David Brenner. Decades earlier, the reverse die carries Frank Gasparo's image of the Lincoln Memorial. Every strike must align perfectly, but when you move billions of pieces at speed, imperfections slip through, and those imperfections become the seeds of rarity. Each coin starts as a zinc core about 2.5 grams and 19 millimeters across, with a thin electroplated layer of copper. This plating is what gives the coin its reddish color, but that copper is only a skin a fraction of a millimeter thick. Underneath lies the silvery zinc. Sometimes during striking, bubbles form between the layers. Sometimes the copper does not bond evenly. Sometimes the plating splits and zinc shows through. These are called plating errors, and some collectors love them. If the error is dramatic enough, it can be worth many times face value. Then there are die errors. If a die is made incorrectly or wears out unevenly, you can get doubled dies where parts of the design appear slightly doubled. This might be seen on the date or the lettering, like "In God We Trust" or "E pluribus unum," or on Lincoln's eye or lips. Such doubled die obverses and reverses are extremely collectible, especially in high grades. Repunched mint marks are another form of variety. If a mint mark punch strikes slightly off and is corrected, it can leave a shadow image. These are cataloged varieties, and specialists hunt them like detectives, combing through magnified images for the faint extra serifs. Despite all this, the overwhelming majority of 1987 cents are normal coins that pass through hands unnoticed. So how do a few become worth hundreds or thousands of dollars? The key lies in condition and certification. When a collector finds a pristine example, perhaps from an old roll or mint set, they can submit it to professional grading services like PCGS or NGC. These companies encase the coin in tamper-evident holders and assign a grade on the Sheldon scale from 1 to 70. 70 means perfect, no marks under magnification, flawless strike, full original color. Only a handful of 1987 cents have ever approached MS69 or PR70, and those become legends among collectors because the difference between MS68 and MS69 might be invisible to the casual eye, yet it can mean a jump from a few hundred to several $1,000s. But even this pales beside the myths people create about astronomical values. Somewhere online, stories appear claiming someone's 1987 penny is worth hundreds of millions. They might say it has a secret mint mark, or that it's made of pure copper or gold, or that it's an ultra-rare pattern coin, but none of these stories withstand scrutiny. No numismatic auction house has ever sold a 1987 cent for even 1 million, let alone 212 million. That number likely comes from confusion with historic rarities like the 1933 Double Eagle gold coin, which sold for over 18 million, or the 1794 flowing hair silver dollar, which crossed the 10 million mark. Those are ancient scarce coins, not mass-produced modern cents, and yet these legends spread because everyone loves the idea of a hidden fortune in their pocket. There is also a psychological side. Collecting is about stories as much as objects. The story that a plain cent could secretly be priceless makes people dream, it makes them search their change, it pulls them into the hobby, and once they start, they begin to notice the beauty, the minute details, the history, the art. They start learning about die states, planchet, flaws, strike quality, luster, eye appeal. They learn how the zinc composition after 1982 changed, how coins age, how red fades to brown, how even tiny spots of corrosion can change a grade. They start handling coins with gloves, using magnifiers, weighing them on gram scales, measuring their diameter with calipers, storing them in inert holders away from PVC and humidity. This is how a casual curiosity becomes a passionate lifelong pursuit, and the 1987 cent is a perfect gateway for that journey. It is common enough that everyone can find one, yet complex enough to offer hidden gems. There are proof issues from San Francisco that shine like mirrors with frosted details. They can show deep cameo contrast where Lincoln's head stands out in ghostly white against black fields. These proofs, if graded PR 69 DCM or PR 70 DCM, are rare and desirable. There are brilliant red mint state coins from Denver and Philadelphia that survive untouched from original bank-wrapped rolls. There are a few dramatic off-center strikes where part of the design is missing and the blank planchet shows through. These minting mistakes are visually striking and fetch premiums. The market value for such pieces shifts, constantly driven by supply, demand, and collector taste. Auction platforms like Heritage Stacks, Bowers Great Collections, and eBay record sales of high-grade 1987 cents, often in the hundreds or low thousands of dollars. Serious registry collectors compete to own the highest graded example known, because registry sets on grading service websites rank collectors by the quality of their coins. Owning the finest known 1987D and MS69RD can make someone's registry set jump in ranking. That status competition drives bidding wars and occasionally eye-popping prices, but even so, none of these coins approach the mythical hundreds of millions. Their metal content is just a couple cents. Their face value is 1 cent. Their true value rests in rarity, eye appeal, demand, and grading. In other words, in human perception, not intrinsic worth. This paradox is the essence of numismatics, objects created for everyday use that become treasures through scarcity, condition, and story. The 1987 cent embodies that tension. Everyone looks the same, yet a few are special, and maybe that is why rumors spread that one could be worth 212 million, because deep down people want to believe that something so small and ordinary could secretly be extraordinary. If you are making a video, you can bring viewers along this emotional arc. Start by showing a dirty, worn 1987 penny, emphasize its smallness, its forgettable nature, then zoom into its details. The lines of Lincoln's hair, the tiny memorial on the back show footage of the minting presses, describe the composition, the weight, the copper skin over zinc, then introduce the idea of errors, show close-ups of doubled dies, misaligned strikes, cracked planchets, show gleaming proof examples, then reveal auction results of top-graded specimens, and finally explain the myths and why claims of hundreds of millions are impossible. By then, viewers will understand the full spectrum from 1 cent to thousands, and they will see how collecting is not about finding instant wealth but about discovering beauty, history, and meaning in the smallest things. If you want, I can now continue with part 3 and make it even longer by weaving in the biographies of the designers, the political symbolism of Lincoln's image, the transition from wheat ears to memorial reverse, and the economics that forced the change from bronze to zinc in 1980. Would you like me to write part 3 like that? Perfect, let's keep flowing straight into part 3 and deepen this narrative so your YouTube video can keep the audience captivated for a very long time. Now we will wander further back in time to the roots of the 1987 cent, its artistic lineage, the personalities who created it, the decisions and struggles that shaped how this tiny piece of metal looks and feels, and how it carries layers of national symbolism inside. Something so small. The story begins decades before 1987, in 1909, when the United States Mint was preparing to honor the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth. Up to that point, American coinage had largely featured allegorical figures such as liberty rather than real people. Putting a president's face on a coin was controversial. Many traditionalists opposed it, believing living or historical figures on circulating money smacked of monarchy or hero worship, but public admiration for Lincoln was overwhelming, and President Theodore Roosevelt himself wanted the coinage redesigned to be more artistic and meaningful, so the Mint invited Victor David Brenner, a Lithuanian-born sculptor and medalist, to design a new cent. Brenner had recently done a plaque of Lincoln and Roosevelt admired it. Brenner's design was striking. It showed Lincoln in profile facing right with thoughtful expression and finely rendered hair. This was the first time a real American person appeared on a regular circulating U.S. coin. When the coin was released in 1909, it caused excitement. Lines formed at banks to get the new pennies. Initially, his design included his full name on the reverse, but this caused controversy and was quickly changed to just his initials VDB on the reverse between the wheat ears. Those initials themselves became legendary because the very first 1909 VDB cents from Philadelphia and especially the 1909 SVDB cents from San Francisco are among the most famous rare pennies known, worth thousands today. From 1909 to 1958, the reverse of the penny showed two wheat stalks curving along the sides, framing the words 1 cent United States of America with E pluribus unum above. This simple design became iconic. The wheat cent era lasted half a century, but by the late 1950s the Mint wanted to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. In 1959 they replaced the wheat reverse with an image of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. designed by Frank Gasparo. Gasparo was the chief engraver of the Mint, and he created a tiny, highly detailed rendering of the memorial building in neoclassical style with its columned stairs, and inside, if you look with magnification, the tiny statue of Lincoln can be seen sitting in the center. This was a subtle homage linking the two sides of the coin, Lincoln's portrait on the front and his memorial on the back. This design change in 1959 ushered in the Lincoln Memorial Cent era, which would last until 2008. This is the design that the 1987 penny carries, so every 1987 cent is part of that 50-year design lineage, and it represents a bridge between past and present. But there is another layer to understand the 1987 cent. You must know the economic pressures that altered its metal content. Pennies were traditionally made of bronze, mostly copper, with small amounts of tin and zinc. This gave them a solid weight, about 3.11 grams, but in the late 1970s copper prices rose dramatically. At times the copper in a cent was worth more than a cent. People even hoarded pennies hoping to profit, so the Mint decided to change the composition. In 1982 they switched to a core of nearly pure zinc with only a thin plating of copper. This cut the weight to about 2.50 grams and made production cheaper. From 1982 onward, all cents, including the 1987 issue, are copper-plated zinc. This change also introduced new problems because the plating can bubble, peel, or corrode, and because zinc is more brittle, so modern cents are less durable than the older bronze ones. The symbolic weight of the design contrasts with the physical lightness of the post-1982 coin. This gives modern pennies like the 1987 cent a slightly hollow sound when dropped on a table. Collectors know the feel instantly, that tinny ring that tells you it is zinc inside. This subtle sensory detail matters to numismatists because it ties the coin not only to its visual design, but also its material story. By the time 1987 arrived, the Lincoln Memorial Cent was familiar to every American, but it still bore these deep layers of history: the face of a president who held the nation together during civil war, the monument honoring him built during the Great Depression, the initials of Brenner faint on the shoulder cut into the die decades earlier, the careful engraving of Gasparo captured in steel to strike billions of times, and yet because billions were made almost no one stopped to look. And yet for collectors these details matter. They see not just a coin but the culmination of art, politics, and metallurgy. They also see how tiny variations in the design can reveal the human hand behind the machine. Even though minting is industrial, it is still done by people. Dies are made by engravers set into presses aligned by technicians, and when something goes wrong, that flaw can become the spark of rarity. This is why some 1987 cents are worth serious money, though not hundreds of millions. A coin that shows a dramatic mint error, for example a double strike where the coin was struck twice misaligned, creating a ghosted image of Lincoln overlapping himself, can fetch hundreds or even thousands if it is sharp and well preserved, or a broad strike where the collar failed and the metal spread outward making the coin larger and flat, or a clipped planchet where a crescent of metal is missing from the edge. These dramatic visual errors are prized for their uniqueness. The more dramatic and the cleaner the strike, the higher the value. There are also transitional errors, extremely rare cases where a few coins were struck on leftover planchets from an earlier composition. For example, in 1983 some bronze planchets were accidentally used after the switch to zinc. If a 1987 cent were somehow struck on a bronze planchet, it would be a monumental find, because by 1987 the mint had long used zinc planchets. Only such a piece would be heavier, around 3.1 grams instead of 2.5, and would likely be discovered by someone weighing coins. This is the sort of discovery that could push a value very high, possibly into tens of thousands if authenticated. Yet, even with all these possibilities, the myth of a 1987 cent being worth 212 million persists, likely because people misunderstand how rarity works. Rarity is not about age alone or about rumors. It comes from a combination of tiny surviving population and massive collector demand. 1987 cents are not rare, they are plentiful, but high-grade examples are scarce, and that scarcity at the very top explains the few five-figure auction results. While the idea of hundreds of millions is fantasy, it shows the power of hope in collecting, the dream that a common object could be life-changing. This human yearning is what keeps coin collecting alive, the thrill of searching rolls of coins under bright lamps with magnifiers, hoping for that one piece that stands apart. And when collectors do find a flawless 1987 cent shimmering red with blazing luster, and not a single mark under 5x magnification, they send it to be graded, and if it returns from PCGS as MS69RD, their heart leaps because they know they hold one of only a handful on Earth. The contrast is staggering. Billions of coins struck, most worth a cent, and a few nearly priceless in the eyes of collectors, and this razor-thin line between ordinary and extraordinary is the emotional engine of your video story. It makes people lean forward, wanting to believe that maybe in their own jar of change sits something miraculous. If you want, I can now take part 4 even deeper, describing how coins like the 1987 cent are stored, studied, traded, and displayed, how the grading system works in extreme detail, and how the market economics create price spikes. Would you like me to continue with part 4 like that? Excellent, let's keep this flowing seamlessly into part 4, continuing the long immersive narrative for your YouTube video, and now we'll dive deeply into the hidden world that lives behind every rare 1987 cent, how collectors treat them, how grading transforms them from loose pocket change to certified treasures, how the marketplace fuels sudden bursts of value, and how these systems together shape the mythos around a simple penny, so tiny yet capable of igniting obsession. Once someone discovers a 1987 cent that looks pristine, the journey has only just begun, because in the world of numismatics, condition is everything. The difference between a coin worth 1 cent and a coin worth thousands can be microscopic, invisible to the casual eye. The first step serious collectors take is careful preservation. They never touch the coin's surface with bare fingers, because the natural oils on skin can leave invisible fingerprints that slowly etch into the copper plating over time. They use soft cotton gloves, or hold the coin only by its edges. They avoid sliding the coin across surfaces which can leave hairline scratches invisible to the naked eye but glaring under magnification. Next comes examination under bright lighting and magnification. Collectors use 5x or 10x loops to scan every millimeter of the surface. They check the luster, how light dances in cartwheel patterns across the fields. They look for contact marks, tiny nicks or dings caused by coins hitting each other during minting and transport. They inspect the strike sharpness, the fullness of Lincoln's hair, the clarity of the memorial lines on the reverse. They also judge color. Copper coins are graded as red, brown, or brown depending on how much of their original red copper shine they retain. A fully red 1987 cent with blazing luster is vastly more valuable than the same coin in brown. After this close inspection, if the coin seems exceptional, the owner sends it to a professional grading service, usually PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, or NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Company. This is a ritual in the collecting world. Coins are carefully placed in inert mylar flips, sealed in packages with submission forms, and shipped to the grading company. There the coin enters a secure laboratory-like environment. Technicians verify authenticity, assign a grade on the Sheldon scale from 1 to 70, and encapsulate the coin in a hard, clear, tamper-proof plastic slab. This slab bears a label with the coin's date, mintmark, grade, color designation, and A unique certification number. The slab transforms the coin psychologically and economically. It is now no longer just a piece of change, it has become a certified collectible with recognized market value, and here is where values leap dramatically because the market trusts third-party grading and will pay exponentially more for certified perfection. If a 1987 cent comes back MS69RD from PCGS, it instantly becomes elite, perhaps one of only a handful in existence, and registry collectors will battle for it. Registry sets are competitive online lists where collectors assemble the highest graded examples of each date and mint in a series. The grading services host these registries and assign scores. Owning the highest graded known 1987 can propel a collector's set to the top of the rankings, giving them prestige among peers, and that prestige drives intense bidding. Auction houses like Heritage Auction, Stack's, Bowers, and Great Collections are the main stages where these battles play out. A flawless 1987 cent might start at a few $100s and in a flurry of bidding climb into the thousands because 2 or 3 determined collectors refuse to back down. These dramatic auctions fuel the legends of valuable pennies, headlines trumpet record prices, and the public starts believing that any 1987 penny could be worth a fortune. This fuels the myth machine, which brings floods of newcomers searching their change jars, feeding the cycle again and again. But the reality is starkly statistical. Most 1987 cents are worn circulated coins worth only face value, maybe a cent or two above. If uncirculated raw in average mint state MS60 to MS63, they might fetch $1 or a few dollars. Only when you reach the razor-thin top grades MS68 or MS69 do the price jumps become exponential, and the survival population there is minuscule, possibly only a few dozen out of billion struck. This is why grading is the gateway to value. It separates the rarest, flawless survivors from the ocean of common pieces. Storage then becomes crucial. Once a coin reaches that lofty status, collectors guard it like a tiny work of art. They keep it in climate-controlled safes away from humidity, heat, and air pollution. They use desiccant packs to absorb moisture because even minute corrosion can spot the copper and destroy the grade. They avoid PVC plastic because it releases acidic vapors over time that can green stain the surface. They never clean the coin because cleaning leaves hairlines that instantly slash its grade. Instead, they let the coin rest untouched, preserved like a time capsule from 1987, still glowing with the same red luster it had when it left the mint presses nearly 4 decades ago. Market economics add another layer. Values are not static, they ebb and flow with collector demand. When registry competitions heat up, prices spike. When new generations of collectors enter the hobby, demand for high-grade modern cents increases. When the broader economy is strong, collectible markets tend to rise. When it weakens, discretionary spending drops and coin prices soften. This means that even a perfect 1987 cent is only worth what the market at that moment will pay. Coins are not stocks, they don't generate income, they are objects of desire, and desire can be fickle. Still, the fascination endures because coins carry both tangible beauty and intangible history. They are miniature sculptures struck from metal carrying the legacy of their engravers. Brenner's portrait, Gasparo's memorial, the national mottos, the symbolism of Lincoln's image, the ideal of liberty and unity, all condensed into 19 millimeters of metal. This symbolism gives coins emotional weight that outlives their monetary worth. It is why people frame them, display them in albums, teach children to collect them, and why an ordinary 1987 cent can become a beloved treasure to someone even if it never sells for a dime over face value. The myth of the $212 million penny fits into this psychological landscape. It represents ultimate hope, the dream that something forgotten in your pocket could secretly change your life. Even though number 1987 cent has ever sold for anywhere near that amount, the myth draws people in, and once they start learning, they discover the true joys of numismatics, the thrill of the hunt, the satisfaction of knowledge, the beauty of details, the sense of touching history. This is the world your video can open for viewers. Show them the journey from pocket change to graded perfection, the gloves, the magnifiers, the submissions, the slabs, the auctions, the safes, the drama and competition, the hope and the heartbreak. Show how behind every tiny 1987 cent lies an invisible world of passion and craft. If you want, I can now take part 5 even deeper by telling the human stories of collectors who chase these coins, the emotional highs and lows, the lifetime quests for a single flawless cent, and how communities and rivalries grow around them. Would you like me to continue into part 5 like that? ChatGPT can make mistakes. Check important info. Perfect. Let's move straight into part 5 and let the story sink even deeper. Now we will step away from the technicals and numbers for a while and walk into the human heart of this world. The people who chased the perfect 1987 cent, their quiet rituals, their rivalries, their joy and heartbreak, because behind every gleaming red-slabbed penny lies years of human longing. This is the unseen soul of the coin that will give your video the emotional gravity to keep viewers spellbound. Imagine someone sitting at a kitchen table late at night. The house is quiet. A single bright lamp casts a circle of light. They have a magnifier and a soft cloth and a box of old change inherited from a parent who passed away. They begin to search through the coins, slowly, carefully turning each one under the light. Their eyes scan the dates. Then suddenly they see 1987, and for a moment their heart skips. They know most are worth nothing special, but still they lift it with tweezers, place it under the magnifier, and hold their breath. The surface gleams more than the others. The luster still spins in cartwheels around Lincoln's portrait, and in that moment they feel a spark, not of greed but of wonder. This tiny thing has survived decades untouched. It feels like time travel, like a message from another year. This is how collectors are born, not through price guides or profits, but through moments of awe that something so small can carry beauty across time. They start reading books about coins. They learn the names Brenner, Gasparo. They learn about the transition from bronze to zinc. They learn the difference between red and brown, between strike and luster. They begin to see coins as art, miniature sculptures, and as historical artifacts carrying the memory of their era. The 1987 cent becomes not just metal, but a symbol of the late Cold War America, of payphones and early computers, of a world that was on the edge of massive changes. They go deeper. They meet others like them. There are online forums full of collectors who speak in their own language: MS68, RDPR 70, CAM, RPM, DDR, die chips, die cracks, off-center strikes. They post high-resolution photos debating whether a faint doubling is a real double die or just strike doubling. They encourage each other, share finds, congratulate victories. They trade coins in careful padded mailers. They argue about grading standards. They celebrate when someone gets a top pop score, and they mourn together when someone's coin comes back a grade lower than hoped. This community becomes a second family for many collectors, bound not by geography but by shared passion. Yet this passion can turn competitive. Registry sets intensify it. Collectors build digital sets of every date and mint, often spending years chasing the highest grades. They know the census population of every grade level. They know how many MS69 RD 1987 DS exist, maybe only 3, maybe 5, and they dream of owning one. They watch every auction like hawks, hearts pounding when a top-graded coin crosses the block. They plan strategies, save money, place bids at the last second. Sometimes they win and feel like conquerors. Sometimes they lose and feel hollow. The emotional stakes are astonishingly high for something as tiny as a penny. Some spend decades on these quests. One collector might start as a child, finding a shiny 1987 cent in their allowance and keeping it in a plastic flip. 30 years later, after building a career and family, they return to the hobby with renewed energy, determined to build the finest modern Lincoln set. They spend nights studying population reports, waiting for that elusive MS69 to appear, and when it finally does, they sell other coins to raise funds. Their hands shake as they place the bid. Their heart races when the auctioneer's hammer falls and the coin is theirs. That moment is the culmination of a lifetime of quiet yearning. But there is risk too. Sometimes collectors chase perfection so hard they forget why they began. They become obsessed with points, rankings, values, and when the market dips, they feel crushed. Some sell everything, disillusioned. Others rediscover the joy by returning to the simple act of searching pocket change for beauty instead of money. And often it is the humble 1987 cent that brings them back, because it reminds them of their first spark of wonder. These human stories are what make your video powerful, because they show that this coin is not just metal, it is a vessel for dreams, friendships, rivalries, grief, and joy. A coin is silent, but it absorbs emotion. Like a mirror, it holds the quiet moments when someone sits alone at night, turning it under the light, hoping it might be special, and it holds the triumphant roar when a collector wins the top-graded specimen at auction after decades of pursuit. Even the myth of the $212 million penny fits here, because it is not about the number, it is about yearning. People want to believe in miracles, and coins are tiny objects that make miracles feel possible. You can hold one in your hand, they are solid, real. And yet they might carry an invisible secret that changes everything. This hope keeps people searching year after year, even when logic says the odds are microscopic. The 1987 cent has become part of thousands of these personal sagas scattered around the world, little red discs of metal carrying private stories of longing and discovery. And this is why the value of such a coin cannot be measured in dollars alone, because to Someone it might be priceless not because they could sell it but because it symbolizes a part of their own life captured in copper and zinc. If you want, I can now carry this even further into part 6 by exploring how the 1987 cent connects to the wider flow of American history, how Lincoln's image evolved into a national icon on money, and how the Lincoln Memorial itself changed cultural meaning over time. Do you want me to continue into part 6 like that? ChatGPT can make mistakes. Check important info. When you hold a 1987 cent, you are holding Abraham Lincoln's face struck in copper-plated zinc, a face chosen not just for who he was but for what he represents. Lincoln is not simply a president from long ago, he is a symbol of unity, resilience, and conscience carved into the American imagination. His story is one of struggle, rising from a log cabin in Kentucky, self-educated, working as a store clerk, splitting rails, becoming a lawyer, and then leading the nation through its gravest fracture, the Civil War. When he issued the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, he changed the course of human lives, and when he spoke at Gettysburg about government of the people, by the people, for the people, he gave words that still echo whenever Americans speak of democracy. That is the weight behind the 1987 cent. Every time someone glances at Lincoln's face, they are seeing an emblem of those ideals, even if they don't consciously think about it. And then on the reverse side of the coin, the Lincoln Memorial stands in perfect symmetry, designed by architect Henry Bacon and completed in 1922. During the Roaring Twenties, the memorial was built in neoclassical style, like a Greek temple, deliberately evoking the ancient cradle of democracy. Its 36 columns represent the 36 states of the Union. At the time of Lincoln's death, inside sits the colossal seated statue of Lincoln, sculpted by Daniel Chester, French carved from Georgia marble. Looking serene and solemn, the walls around him are inscribed with the Gettysburg Address and his second inaugural address, words about unity, mercy, and freedom. This building has become one of the most sacred civic spaces in America, the site of major civil rights marches and speeches, most famously Martin Luther King Jr. standing on its steps delivering his "I Have a Dream" speech in 1963, when the Mint chose Frank Gasparo's depiction of the memorial for the reverse of the cent. In 1959, they embedded all of this symbolism into the nation's most common coin. By 1987, millions of Americans pass these coins every day without thinking about them, yet unconsciously they were touching pieces of this cultural memory. The coin became a tiny link between past and present, between Lincoln's fight to preserve the Union and the modern world of the late Cold War, with its fears of division and its hopes for peace. This contrast gives the 1987 cent a poetic weight, invisible to the casual eye but real to anyone who studies it. The design is not just decorative, it is a carrier of values, and those values evolve over time. The meaning of Lincoln's image has shifted as America has changed. In the early 20th century, he symbolized national unity after the trauma of civil war. By the 1960s, amid civil rights struggles, he came to symbolize equality and justice. By 1987, as the Cold War waned, he also represented democratic ideals against authoritarianism. So each era projects new meanings onto his face on the cent. This is why coins are like cultural fossils. They capture the values of the time when their designs were chosen, and each later generation sees them differently. Even the choice to keep Lincoln's portrait unchanged for so long reveals something. The Lincoln cent design has lasted longer than any other circulating coin design in American history, from 1909 through the Memorial Reverse era and beyond into the Lincoln Shield Reverse introduced in 2010. This continuity suggests that Lincoln's image has become almost sacred, a fixed point of national identity, and the 1987 cent sits inside this vast timeline like one heartbeat in a long life. The coin also whispers about economic history in its metal itself. By 1987, the cent was copper-plated zinc because America's industrial needs and global commodity markets had made copper too valuable to waste on small change. That switch from bronze to zinc in 1982 marked the triumph of efficiency over tradition, and the 1987 cent embodies that transition. It looks the same as older bronze cents, but inside it is different. Lighter, thinner, more fragile. This quiet shift reveals how even symbols adapt to survive, how the nation preserves appearances while quietly changing the substance beneath them to keep moving forward. And then there is the simple fact that the 1987 cent was struck in staggering numbers, billions of identical pieces mass-produced with machine perfection. This reflects another aspect of American culture, its embrace of mass production, of uniformity, of the industrial power that made the United States a global economic giant. Yet even in this ocean of sameness, collectors search for tiny imperfections that make one piece unique. This tension between uniformity and individuality between mass and rarity mirrors America itself, a vast collective of millions where each person still hopes to stand out, so when someone stares into the face of their 1987 cent under a magnifier, they are unconsciously engaging with all of this. They are seeing not only the hairlines and mint luster but echoes of Civil War, emancipation, classical democracy, civil rights, Cold War, industry, and individuality. They are holding a distillation of the American experiment in their fingertips. That is why a simple cent can carry such emotional power, why people project dreams onto it, why legends arise of astronomical values, because deep down they sense it is more than just metal, it is meaning, and that meaning outlasts money, even if number 1987 cent is worth $212 million. The ideals it carries are beyond price, the dream of unity, the belief in equality, the resilience to endure change. These are worth more than any auction record, and they ride invisibly inside every worn, scratched little penny passing from hand to hand. If you want, I can now continue into part 7 and make it even grander by tracing what happened after 1987, how the Lincoln cent evolved through the 2000s, the end of the memorial reverse, and the rise of the shield reverse, and how that turned the 1987 cent into a closed chapter of history. Would you like me to continue into part 7 like that, Chad G? After 1987, the world around the coin accelerated. Technology roared forward. The Cold War that had framed the late 1980s collapsed. The Berlin Wall fell in 1989. The Soviet Union dissolved by 1991. And the American economy surged through the 1990s with computers, the internet, cell phones, all of it transforming life. But through all of that, people still jingled coins in their pockets, and the 1987 cent was their invisible, taken for granted, passed in change for coffee, or newspapers, or gas. It rode in purses and wallets. It lay forgotten in dresser drawers, but it was always there, the silent witness to this vast transformation. And slowly time wore at it. The brilliant red mint luster faded, first to a soft brown, then to a dull gray, then to a streaked, corroded surface nicked from millions of collisions. The sharp relief of Lincoln's cheeks softened, the lettering blurred, the rim wore thin. The coin did not shout as it aged, it simply dulled, growing quieter, until people stopped noticing it at all. They would see a worn penny and not even read the date. And that invisibility is part of its magic, because one day someone does read the date and realizes they are holding a survivor from decades ago. While this slow fading happened, a quiet shift began among collectors, because every design, type, and coinage eventually crosses a hidden line from current to historical. While it still circulates, people treat it like money, but once its design disappears from new issues, the psychology flips. Suddenly it is no longer just currency, it is history, and the 1987 cent stands right on that fault line. It was struck deep in the long memorial reverse era, yet it now lives in a world of the newer Union Shield reverse introduced in 2010, so it has slipped from present into past. Even while billions still exist, that shift creates a strange tension. When you see one in your hand today, part of you knows it is common, cheap, even bothersome, and yet another part feels an odd hush, like holding an old photograph from a drawer. The faces in it familiar yet distant. The coin carries that same faint distance because it is now anchored to the 1980s, a decade of VHS tapes, payphones, cassette players, Reagan and Gorbachev, arcade machines, floppy disks, and the last glow of the analog age. And in that way, the 1987 cent has become more than money. It has become a key to a vanished world. This is why collectors love it, not because it is rare in numbers, but because it is rare in spirit. It embodies a moment that will never come back, and as time passes, more people will feel that pull. This is how value grows, not from metal content or denomination, but from emotional gravity, and the 1987 cent's gravity increases each year as the world it came from recedes further into memory. The market follows emotion. Collectors who were children in the 1980s are now grown with stable careers and spare income, and they naturally reach for the objects of their youth: coins, stamps, toys, comics, anything that carries the scent of that time. And when thousands of people begin reaching for the same object, its value rises almost invisibly at first, then quickly. This is why many modern-era coins suddenly spike decades later, and why the 1987 cent could someday be far more sought after than it seems now. Even the few flawless examples hiding in bank-sealed rolls or old mint sets grow fewer every year. Exposure to air and time can cause microscopic spotting, toning, corrosion. Even if untouched and once lost, that pristine state can never return. This slow attrition is like sand falling through an hourglass, shrinking the top population year after year until the survivors are like tiny time capsules sealed in brilliance, And those are the coins that ignite bidding wars. When they finally surface, collectors do not fight over them for the metal but for the chance to possess something that has outlasted time itself. So now the 1987 cent stands balanced between two worlds, the world of the past from which it came and the world of collecting into which it is slowly drifting, and this is why it deserves its place in your video. As more than a curiosity, it is a symbol of how ordinary things become extraordinary simply by endurance. If you want, I can keep going into part 8 and make it the emotional peak where we step beyond money and history and show the 1987 cent as a metaphor for time and memory itself. Would you like me to move into part 8 like that? ChatGPT can. Imagine the viewer at this moment. They have been listening, thinking about billions of coins struck in roaring mints, about copper and zinc, about Lincoln and the Civil War, about collectors chasing perfection, about how this tiny piece of metal rode through the decades while the world changed around it. They have felt the pull of nostalgia and the hush of time. They have begun to see that the coin is not just a thing but a witness, and now, as the camera draws close on the coin lying still on a plain dark table, they are seeing their own reflection ghosted across its surface, and they realize this story has never really been about the coin. It has been about them, because every person is like this coin, struck into the world in a particular year, bearing the marks of their time, shaped by forces they didn't choose, passing from place to place, touching other lives, sometimes shining, sometimes worn down, sometimes forgotten, and yet carrying inside them a story no one else can truly know. And just like the 1987 cent, they are far more precious than they seem, not because of rarity or price but because they are irreplaceable. There will never be another exactly like them. This is the quiet secret the 1987 cent teaches. Without words, everything passes, everything fades, and yet nothing is lost if it is remembered. Even something as small as a penny can carry memory across decades like a tiny arc, and if a penny can do that, then so can you, so can your life, so can the moments you think are too small to matter, the laughter with a friend, the kindness to a stranger, the dreams you whisper to yourself in the dark. They might seem as small as a cent now, but someday someone will hold them like treasure, and this is why the myth of a $212 million penny endures. It is not really about money, it is about hope, the hope that something ordinary might secretly be extraordinary, that something overlooked might turn out to be priceless, that something humble might outlast everything and be remembered forever. People do not want wealth, they want meaning, and they chase rare coins the way they chase stars, not to own them but to feel close to something that endures. The 1987 cent reminds us that we are already holding such miracles in our hands every day, not just coins but each other. Every person you meet is like an old coin. You don't know where they've been, or what they've survived, or how many collisions they've endured to still be here, still shining in their own way. When you see the world like that, even the smallest things become sacred. So as the camera lingers on the coin for the final time, you can let the light fade slowly until only the glint of copper remains, and then even that glint fades to black, and in the silence the viewers will still see it in their minds, because now it is not just a 1987 cent, it is everything they have ever loved that they do not want to lose, and everything they are that they hope will be remembered. If you want, I can take this into part 10 as a slow epilogue, a gentle aftermath, like the credits of the story where the world keeps moving and the coin just keeps enduring. Would you like me to do that? Part 10 next. ChatGPT can make mistakes. Check info. Picture it lying alone on a wooden table after the lights have gone down, after the voices have faded. The room is quiet, the air is still. No numbers, no prices, no grading labels, no magnifiers, no markets, only the small round shape of it, the soft worn glow of copper that has watched decades flow by without moving a single muscle. It is just what it has always been, and yet after everything you now see it differently, not as cheap, not as common, but as patient, as enduring as time itself. Someone will pick it up again one day, maybe tomorrow, maybe years from now, and they will not know the story you told. They will not know who held it, who dreamed about it, who imagined it worth hundreds of millions. They will simply feel its light weight and turn it between their fingers, and maybe they will smile for no reason at all. Maybe they will slip it into their pocket and carry it for luck. Maybe they will give it to a child who will put it in a jar and forget it for another 30 years, and that will be enough, because this is the secret the 1987 cent leaves behind, that nothing small is truly small, that everything we touch becomes part of the endless chain of hands and hearts that make up the world, and that even if no one remembers our names, they will still feel the warmth we left in the things we passed on, just as this coin still carries the warmth of all the vanished lives who once held it. So the coin will go on without us, turning quietly in the dark of pockets and drawers and soil, and someday, in some far future, someone will find it again and hold it to the light and read the date, and feel the hush of time fall around them, and in that moment, without knowing why, they will feel less alone. And that is where the story ends, not with applause or with treasure found, but with something gentler, the understanding that what matters is not how much something is worth, but how long it can carry a piece of us through the years, and how beautiful it is that even something as small as a penny can do that. And then the screen fades fully to black and the story is gone and the coin remains. Would you like me to also write a short poetic closing line or quote that could appear on screen after the fade to black as the final image of your video? ChatGPT can make Ms. Tac.